All right, moving on. Many of you watching may be aware that COP26, the climate summit in Glasgow, is happening today. I believe a lot of it's actually going live as we speak. I saw about an hour ago Boris Johnson was making his live speech there.
Was he?
Didn't manage to catch any of it, sadly, in preparation for this. But I can make a few guesses at what he was saying. But we were going to cover some of what's going on. But before we do, Carl just wants to go through a little bit of what COP is and what their aims are.
Yeah, so this is a world climate conference where there's going to be more than 120 world leaders and thousands of delegates attending climate talks in Glasgow, Scotland. The place most... No, I'm not going to make a joke. We're not allowed to make jokes about this sort of stuff because YouTube has changed their guidelines. And maybe we should preface this as well, actually. We think that climate changes.
Real?
Yes, we do not deny that climate changes. We believe that climate does change. However, I think that the accuracy of climate model predictions has been suspect, but that's only because of their record of predictions that we'll go through shortly.
I mean, we believe the experts. I mean, which experts you want to believe will give you varying different answers as to the severity or why the climate is changing. So,
yeah. And I don't doubt that if we reduce emissions, that maybe that will have an effect on the climate. It's a very conservative position to think that we can fix the climate in one position forever, but I'm in favor of that. So anyway, Joe Biden's going to be there, Boris Johnson's going to be there, Modi's going to be there. But interestingly, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are not going to be there.
Oh, what's a surprise?
Yeah, not surprised that Putin won't be there, and I'm not surprised that Xi Jinping won't be there. But that's the point, isn't it? Because China is the country producing the majority, the most amount of pollution
out of any other country. I've looked into this. I mean, if you're going by, I think, greenhouse or CO2 emissions, it is 27% of the entire world's output, which is almost double the USA, which is 15%, who are the next in line. Yeah. And then when you get to the UK, it's like negligible 1%.
Yeah, we're 1%. Yeah. So important that we host this conference, but yeah. So let's go on to what they're trying to achieve. We can go to the next one, John. So on page 6 of this, they give us just some bullet points of what they're trying to do. So they want to secure global net zero by the middle of the century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach. So they want to reduce the amount of carbon emissions, which they think will reduce global warming to 1.5 degrees within the next decade or whatever.
And how you expect to do that when China is just completely off the table? I mean,
I don't see how it can be done.
Unless we can unless every other country can get to like minus emissions somehow. Start sucking the CO2 out of the atmosphere, then unless we can do that, then I don't see how we're going to be able to reach those kinds of goals. Yeah,
and so they want to do that by 2030. And again, that's not to say that they don't think the climate won't increase. They just want to do it slower. And so to deliver on these stretching targets, countries will need to accelerate the phase out of coal, encourage investments in renewables, and curtail deforestation and speed up the switch to electric vehicles. Or they could adopt nuclear power, which they're not talking about at all. Renewables, but not nuclear. Okay.
And once again, China off the table, nuclear off the table.
So it seems to be a boondoggle that's not going to work.
Doesn't France, that has the global, the nuclear power stations, also provide excess energy to the surrounding countries because it's that efficient?
To Germany, who decommissioned all of their nuclear power plants for some reason, and then had to go back to using coal. It's really just bizarre.
Very strange.
Absolutely, it's totally ideological. That's the problem with all of this.
Oh yeah,
so it's not about being what. Okay, let's assume you do want these things. Okay, well, what are the practical steps we could take? Well, we're not going to do that or that or that. Now we've got a bunch of really impractical things. And again, like the renewable energy. Well, they take a lot of carbon to produce, as I understand it. Like,
yes, I believe that when you're producing something like solar panels and other such things like that, don't they need cobalt for them?
Yeah,
possibly. Which obviously.
I saw a thing on wind turbines that are just not produced in an economically sound way.
Yeah,
environmentally sound.
And then even with solar panels, I think you need to change them out every 10 to 15 years, and they're not biodegradable.
No, yeah, and they create waste. So none of these problems you get with nuclear power. But anyway, moving on, they want to adapt communities and to protect communities and natural habitats. Okay.
All right. I'm fine protecting natural habitats.
Yeah.
I like England looking pretty and green
yeah,
personally.
That would be lovely.
That's great by me.
If we could not build vast numbers of new houses over our green spaces, that would be great.
Yeah, Scruton is green philosophy. I
agree with it.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it not being framed in this way in here, but never mind. They of course want to mobilize finance. Of course they do. They want the countries who are going to this to raise 100 billion for climate finance in the next year.
Wonder where
And
they're
I'm
gonna get
sure that
money.
is not going to just be pissed away
Mm-hmm.
on crap.
And who are they going to get all that money from?
Yeah, exactly. Us, the taxpayers. That's
Yep.
you listening. You're going to have to pay for this. They are working together to deliver. We can only rise to the challenges of climate change by working together. At COP26, we must finalise the Paris Rulebook, which is the rules needed to implement the Paris Agreement. You remember that Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement.
Or wasn't that precisely because China didn't want anything to do with it? And he was like, well, if you're not going to, then we're not going to.
Then it can't be done. Yeah, exactly. And we have to turn our ambitions into action by accelerating collaboration between governments, businesses, and civil society to deliver our climate goals faster. Sounds a lot like an international climate fascism. Like we need to integrate governments, businesses, and civil society. It's like, oh God, I don't like the way this is going. But they give us a bit of doom mongering, and I love a bit of doom mongering from the climate change lobby because they're so good at it. Right? If we can go down to a couple of pages, they go, "Why does limiting the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees matter?" So, do you want to know wwhy?
Oh, I wouldn't mind knowing why.
Because at 2 degrees we all die.
We all spontaneously combust, presumably.
Basically, yes. Go down a bit more, John. It's another page. But they say at 2 degrees of global warming, there's a picture of like a lightning storm.
Can I just
go
say,
down a bit?
It just reminds me of that scene from Scanners. If it hits 2 degrees, everyone's just gonna explode their heads.
There we go. This is the one. See, look at that wonderful picture there. Right?
That is a fantastic photo, to be fair.
It is great, and I mean, I don't know that that's the cause of climate change. I think there were lightning storms before.
I think the Greeks were quite familiar with lightning.
They did have it occasionally. But anyway, at 2 degrees of global warming, there would be widespread and severe impacts on people and nature. A third of the world's population would be regularly exposed to severe heat, leading to health problems and more heat-related deaths. Maybe. Almost all warm water coral reefs would be destroyed, and the Arctic sea ice would melt entirely, at least one summer per decade. Possibly. With devastating impacts on wildlife and the communities they support. We cannot rule out the possibility that the irreversible loss of ice sheets in Greenland and the Antarctic could be triggered, leading several meters of sea level rise for centuries to come. I mean, we can't rule it out. Doesn't mean it's happening, though. Just saying. 1.5 degrees, the impacts would be serious but less severe. There'd be lower risks of food shortages and water shortages. Again, this is about risk. Like, we're not guaranteeing these things will happen. They just think, oh, it might happen. Lower risks to economic growth and fewer species at risk of extinction. Like who? What, polar bears? Yeah, they've been saying the polar bears are going extinct for decades now. I'm going to go to the next one. Apparently, in 2007, they were predicting that, in fact, by now, 16,400 polar bears would be dead. And in 1984, there were 25,000 estimated polar bears.
Yeah, I mean, this is all the stuff that I was learning during high school.
Right.
I was fed all of this stuff about, the polar bears are going to, by the time you're 25, you're going to be dead. Well, I'm 25 and
the polar bear population is bigger than it's ever been.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pleasant surprise.
They were estimated 25,000. Yeah, it is actually. There's nice, estimated that 25,000 in 1984. Now there are more than 30,000, 31,000, something like that. And then you get this, just pause on this second, this National Geographic documentary that came out a couple of years ago, where it's a starving polar bear, and they're like, oh God, look, this is the consequence of climate change.
Is that in the Antarctic?
No, polar bears are in the Arctic.
Oh, the Arctic, okay.
The Arctic is named after bears.
Oh, fair.
Art being Latin or something for bear.
Oh, very interesting.
Antarctic meaning no bears.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Weird how that was named, right?
That's some good info.
Yeah, but that misleading National Geographic documentary was just a lie. It's just out. I mean, don't get me wrong. Animals do starve to death in the wild.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't...
Obviously, but that doesn't mean species extinction. That doesn't mean ideology,
It doesn't mean if an animal sucks at hunting that the climate had anything to do with it.
No, it doesn't. But again, the weird predictions that have not come to pass is not new for the climate change lobby. So if we go to the next one, in 2011, Gordon Brown was like, well, we've got fewer than 50 days to save our planet.
Still counting.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks to flatten the curve, you know. But he's not the only one. Back in 2000 and 2009, Al Gore was saying that the North Pole would be ice-free by the summer of 2013. Not true.
Yep.
Yeah, there is still ice in the North Pole. Even back in 1989, people were virtue signaling about this. This is Barbara Streisand and her
She
record
needed everybody
collection.
to know how much she cares.
Yep.
We only have 10 years to save our planet. It starts with you and it's easy. And then she just lists a few ways that you can help protect the environment.
So the planet died in 1999?
I mean, love and respect all life. Great advice, Barbara.
No, we must win the war on seagulls. But this, again, like, it's very interesting, especially as you go back to like the 1970s, when it was a complete opposite. It's like, oh no, there's an ice age coming. We need to heat the planet up. Seriously, headlines of the era, right? The Earth's cooling climate in Science News, 15th of November 1969. Colder winters held dawn of new ice age in the Washington Post in January 1970. Science, another ice age, Time magazine, 1974. The Ice Age cometh, Science News, 1975. The Cooling World, Newsweek, 1975. Scientists ask why the world climate is changing. Major cooling may be ahead in the New York Times. Again, all of these credentialed academic.
I was going to say Science magazine, I assume, is some kind of actual professional journal.
All of these are New York Times, Wall Street, Washington Post, Newsweek. You know, these are not like fringe internet blogs.
To play the devil's advocate here, I mean, to make the argument, I'm pretty sure that when they say that they still say the ice age is coming if global warming goes any further, because this is the argument that I've heard.
Go on.
If the ice caps melt and flood the rest of the world, then it will cause the ice age in some way. I don't know the specific details, but I have heard a number of people say, well, if the ice caps melt and everything's flooded, then I presume due to a lack of CO2 or other such things being released into the atmosphere as a result, then everything would just freeze over again somehow. So it might just be wrapping around. I might have got that completely wrong.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not persuaded by the argument, but I don't.
Saying it out loud, neither am I.
I don't think that's the argument that's being made here.
Yeah,
either,
that's the thing. That they're probably making a very different argument.
What they were, if you scroll down a little bit, you can actually see their argument, because what it was is that there'd been a 1.3% cooling between 1964 and 1972. And another one, global temperature. Since the 1940s, global temperature had dropped about 2.7 degrees.
So we've actually made some gains since then.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I mean, like, speaking on like geological timescale, a 10-year period is nothing. Yeah. Like, it's a very minor blip that goes down. It's like, okay, also, you can't make any decisions.
If it's saying that it dropped by about 2.7 degrees and they're worried about it raising 2 degrees now, I don't know how much has changed in the time period since then. It sounds like we're just making up for it.
I have no idea. But anyway, the point is, for my half of this segment, is just, I don't believe their predictions. I'm sorry. They've had too many predictions that are wrong. I do agree that climate changes, but I just don't think these people know as much as they claim to know.
Yeah, and that's more into the more potentially scientific aspect of it. Now let's look at what some of the politicians who are attending COP have been saying in the lead up to here.
Spend our tax money.
How they're going to spend all of our money. So Boris put out this tweet this morning saying, I'll be asking world leaders to take action on coals, cars, cash, and trees to keep alive the prospect of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Now, I don't know exactly the environmental impact of cash, but it seems somewhat disconnected from the rest of it, and almost like we were talking about Insulate Britain last week in terms of it being a little bit, it felt like a psyop, didn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit of a psyop. And when they start to talk about things like cash being environmentally damaging, and then all of a sudden, presumably, I think Rishi Sunak came across recently saying that he wanted to implement some kind of digital currency, it seems like another aspect of the psyop trying to say, well, do you want to save the environment? Well, give us all your cash and you can take out our digital fun books,
Just embrace Bitcoin, conservatives.
Exactly. And then Boris also said recently, this is from Politics for All, that there is no excuses for not tackling climate change. I mean, I think the UK has done a pretty great job of it by their own terms, as far as it's been since the 1990s. We've reduced since 37%.
Well, in the PDF that we were referencing earlier, they do give a bunch of, the UK has done this, and it's okay, good. Then stop talking about it.
I'm pretty sure I've seen it listed that apparently, in terms of reducing carbon emissions and being green, the UK is like either number 1 or 2 in the entire world. So good job, Boris.
Yeah,
we've done it.
Now talk to China.
Yeah, now try and convince Xi. And if we move along, so in preparation to just getting there, it seems that they are doing some damage by their own definitions here. So there's an incredible amount of CO2 being blasted into the atmosphere by world leaders just getting to the COP. So more than 400 private jets carrying world leaders and business executives to COP26 will blast 13,000 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. The flights, which will produce more global warming gas than 1,600 Scots burn through in a year, so probably half the population of Scotland there, have been branded a rank climate hypocrisy and an idea of carbon inequality, which, I mean,
it is.
by their own metrics, it absolutely sounds like it. Joe Biden's Air Force One is expected to touch down in Scotland last night. One of two aircraft he uses. French Cotem 001. It just lists a bunch of the different private jets that they all have. The carbon calculations are actually conservative, as they are based on the emissions of the smaller private jets, which are used by hundreds of the business leaders attending the talk. So that's not even accounting for the fact that all of the big private jets are massive and emit even more. So it really sounds like they care quite a lot. Speaking of which, Joe Biden met the Pope recently, and to do so, he made sure that he had an 85-car-long motorcade of presumably big American gas guzzlers of some form. So Biden and his wife, Jill Biden, used an 85-car motorcade on Friday to go for a meeting with the Pope Francis in Rome. They both used extra cars, as Italy's lockdown rules only permit 3 non-cohabitating people, including the driver, to be present in the vehicle. So thanks, lockdown rules. You're doing a great service for the climate right there. And it's just one of those things. If Kendi can do all of his things through Zoom and get paid handsomely for it, why can the global leaders not find some more carbon efficient, more greenhouse neutral way of having these large summits, these large meetings?
It brings into focus the idea of the two-tier society, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Rules for thee and not for me. And this is something we're seeing a lot from the ruling elites of the West.
And if you want to talk about someone quite high in the ruling elite hierarchy, you go next. We've got Prince Charles calling for military-like style action. So here we've got ITV saying Prince Charles will argue, I assume they've got all of this from like prepared speeches and stuff that they may have had access to. So he will argue that a warlike footing is needed to tackle the climate crisis as he opens COP26 in Glasgow. Prince of Wales is expected to call for vast military-style campaigning to address the urgent environmental issues. The royal, who has spent decades trying to raise awareness of the growing crisis, will speak at the opening ceremony. He's also delivered a speech in Rome yesterday on Sunday to leaders of the G20 summit. During those remarks, he described COP26 as the last chance saloon, as he called for fine words to be translated into finer actions. He said he's eager to work with people in the private sector, and they are apparently ready to play a hugely significant and game-changing role, saying solutions to major issues seem possible only if there is much closer partnership between government, the main multilateral banks, and the private sector and its investors. So no surprise there, just another way where we just say we just want to expand government to encompass
centralization of power.
Yeah, to encompass every single aspect of your life. And once again, the banks being involved in there, Boris talking about how we need to get rid of cash. It's all adding up to something.
But it's interestingly unprogressive, isn't it? It's a deeply conservative position. Like, no, this is how the climate should be, how we are right now. It's not allowed to change. And so we've got to do everything we can to not change it and to make sure it never changes. It's like, well, where's the progressivism now?
Yeah.
You know, like this is all very, very conservative.
But yeah, we've got more on that, such as Nicola Sturgeon committing a pretty symbolic seeming 1 million to fund climate change loss and damage. What in the grand scheme of things globally, £1 million is going to do?
But she's going to send £1 million Scottish pounds, however much that translates to into regular money.
Yeah.
To what, foreigners?
I don't know. It seems like very nebulous. And then we've also got The Guardian being The Guardian and saying that this will be the whitest and most privileged COP ever, because of course they do. It says here, COP26, COP26 coalition, which represents indigenous movements, vulnerable communities, trade unionists, blah, blah, says that up to 2/3 of those it was helping to travel to Glasgow have given up, overwhelmed by a combination of visa and accreditation problems, lack of access to COVID vaccines. So once again, thanks for the lockdowns and everything there, preventing people from getting to this, as well as scarce and expensive accommodation. And yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I can't disagree that, this is a rich kids club for rich elites who are going to get together and say about how they're all going to save the world.
by implementing some sort of international climate fascism.
I mean, they've got David Attenborough there, they've got Greta Thunberg there, so there's a certain level of prestige to it, and we've got...
Apparently, we've got a breaking news from the conference. Boris Johnson has told the conference that climate change is, quote, entirely man-made. Not sure if that's scientifically true, and doesn't explain why the climate changed before man became a thing.
I suppose this is what's going to happen if you're getting most of your advice from an 18-year-old Swedish schoolgirl, I suppose.
Good point, yeah. How did climate change before the evolution of mankind, Boris? Just quick question. But anyway,
there we go.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full thing at 1 p.m. every weekday at lotuseaters.com, or you can sign up to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads of really good stuff. Every week we have a Contemplations and Epochs episode that goes up, and in the Contemplations we talk about just interesting things, and the Epochs episodes are probably my favourite because I love talking about history. This latest one is we're doing a bit of a series on the 100 Years' War and why England kept winning. And we've not finished it yet, and you're going to really enjoy the end of that one. But we've also got other excellent episodes that we do, like the book club. The most recent one was Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. This was about his time in Burma as a colonial officer, and when he was tasked with the shooting of a rampaging elephant. And it's really, really interesting what the circumstance of the thing was. But we also have lots of other content, such as premium articles, which have audio tracks on them for our silver and gold subscribers. And we do premium podcasts about things that we don't really feel that we can put on YouTube or have done a particularly large amount of research into. And so it's worth keeping them slightly more private. And we also do lots of very interesting interviews, such as this one with comedian Steve Hughes, which was really fascinating because I didn't expect him to be a philosopher. But anyway.
Yeah. Also, the last thing to mention is the live event content we have. So we occasionally, when we get around to it, doing our live events, and the videos from them are on the website as premium, of course, because people came to see and paid. So go and check that out. This is on the worst of critical race theory.
Yes.
And I do mean the worst.
It's unconscionable.
Yeah. So if you'd like access to all that premium content, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.